So a big hello to the 1,083 of you that have registered to attend today's Leaders and Legends panel. And frankly, why wouldn't you? What a lineup. Continent 8 came up with this fantastic concept last year, and whilst two of our panelists weren't able to return this year, I'm delighted to be welcoming three new participants in Matt King, Yaniv Sherman and Matt Kalish, as well as welcoming back Jordan, John and Shimon. I'm Micky Swindale. I'm a partner in KPMG's global gaming team, and frankly, it's a privilege for me to be moderating this distinguished group, who, whilst they need no introduction, I will be asking to just briefly introduce themselves at the start of their answer to the first question. Whilst I know that everyone, all of us and all of you listening will feel disappointed not to be together in person at ICE as we were last year, the great compensation is of course that so many more of you get to hear live what is discussed today. So without further ado, let's start by addressing the elephant in the room, i.e. the pandemic, and reflecting back on 2020. What specific challenges did you face during this time and how did you overcome them? And will this influence any of your 2021 plans? John Coleman, if I could come to you first and ask you to start off by introducing yourself.
Thank you very much, Micky. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is John Coleman. I'm the CEO of Microgaming. And yeah, I guess reflecting, and apologies, I just have a cat floating around here, so she could jump up on me at any point in time. The joys of working from home. Challenges, I guess. Reflecting back, and when I was asked to join, I've been thinking about this. This time last year, I and the team were going through a lot of changes, and we were in them. If you reflect back, we're in the midst of closing our poker network. We had just announced, or about to announce, that we were closing our bingo network. My team, I was about to undertake a major internal restructure of the business and my leadership team, and then suddenly, obviously, post-ICE, we were in lockdown, and generally you go, how do I do this? So it was a shock to the system, and at the time it felt like a major challenge, and indeed it was. But you know, how did we overcome those, or how did I overcome? I just relied on my team. I learned to communicate far better and more effectively than I had previously, I think. So it was working with the team, taking my complete leadership team. We had to introduce new members. Some members of the team left. We undertook a major team building exercise that spanned many, many weeks, and we had to do all this remotely. So at the time, it was a real challenge. As all my colleagues on this will know, when you close business units and you adapt things, people are leaving your business. You're talking about good people, people who've worked with you, have worked with, and they have worked for the business for many, many years. And then to try and go through this, dealing with people leaving the business and not being able to do that face-to-face, I personally found a real challenge. Not something I look forward to, not something I enjoyed at all, as you can imagine, but we had to do it and you had to get on with it. So we've learned to use technology, and it's been, for my mind, it's been a godsend. So what we have done ahead of how it's influenced 2021 is, by working diligently through the year and actually not stopping for breath, we achieved all of the following. We did close our poker, we did close our bingo, which was something that we had to do. We did restructure our business internally. By September, we put in place our 2021 strategy plan, and we're actively working through that right now. So I've never been more organized, or my business had never been more organized than we were through 2020. So as I sit here now, I feel we're very well positioned in 2021 and have actually found this period of focus and lockdown to be beneficial.
And Matt Kalish, how's it been for you? Equally busy, I imagine.
Quite busy. Quickly, the company, we went public early in the year, right around when the pandemic was starting in March and early April. We went public via a SPAC. At the time, nobody had even really heard of what a SPAC was. Now it's kind of a big thing. And then concurrently, we acquired a company called SB Tech so that we could really own our entire full stack around our sports betting offering. And so that's been a lot of the year has been spent getting used to being a public company, integrating SB Tech, and also adapting to all of the changes in sports content. A lot of the leagues ended up postponing their season. that kind of created a little bit of a vacuum in the content that we were offering. So we were going around globally trying to find interesting things, even if it was, table tennis or NASCAR races, anything that would engage our audience throughout that period of time.
And Jordan, what about you?
Yeah, I'd say it was a year of learning from a team perspective. I look back on it and just nobody had all the answers, and there's a lot of improvisation for our teams. How do you work, collaboratively? How do you build? We spend a lot of time on the iGaming side, especially building new content. How do you do something like that in a fully remote fashion? How do you bring on hundreds of new starters in a remote fashion? How do you open up new offices even in a virtual, remote fashion? So for me, it was an extremely enriching year, I would say, from just a learning perspective in terms of how the business evolved. And then on the just pure business side, for us it was, how do we form, solid partnerships with our customers in a world where we're used to going and traveling and seeing them in person, all across the globe. How do we do that, virtually? So a lot of new tools that we established from a communications perspective. Proud to say that we launched, I think, 25 new sportsbook and iGaming platforms for our customers around the globe in 2020. So, being able to do that amidst, new ways of working, changing the teams, et cetera. It was a chaotic, yet exciting and enriching year at the same time. And as we get into 2021, we just take those learnings forward. It's right now more of the same. And hopefully eventually we'll return to normal. But I think we've learned a lot just about new ways of working and engaging with our customers as well.
And Yaniv, a learning year for you too?
Yeah. I mean, we were, this time last year, we were conducting a heated debate whether we should, 888 is a global organization. We operate across 9 different sites, and we were having a heated debate whether we should formally allow our workers to work either 1 or 2 days a month from home. I think we settled that discussion by now, how many days you can work from home. Now we're sort of trying to transition back to an office environment, but by now we have dozens, if not hundreds, of employees that we onboarded. I mean, we doubled our workforce here in New Jersey that have never set foot in our offices. And 888 is a very tightly knit company. Try to keep it flat and lean and mean. So that DNA is very important. We're now sort of looking ahead through the year and trying to chart course back to it, because that H-star DNA is something very, very important. And having people be part of it, onboarding people via Zoom is sustainable only for a certain period of time. So it's mostly about the people. And I think as digital organizations, we were fortunate enough to have just technology assist us with transitioning to a full work from home environment. Initiating a new work plan, keeping things in motion is easier than initiating new things. So 2021 is definitely a year where we need to transition back to a little bit of a hybrid model, and that's what we're currently focused on.
And of course, working from home is slightly more challenging when you have to shovel snow outside, a little less challenging when you're in Shimon's lucky position. You can see the bright blue sky of Gibraltar behind him. So Shimon, what have been the challenges and the learnings for you?
Yeah, well, firstly, hello to all of you, and thank you very much for having us again. So big hello from Gibraltar, from the sunny Gibraltar today. 2020 was definitely a year of learning, probably a year of challenges and extremes. And we were a little bit more lucky in the sense that we had our BCPs, our business continuity plans, throughout all of Playtech, to all of our different sites. Obviously, it came through experience. In 2014, there was a crisis between Ukraine and Russia. We had a really large office in Ukraine, so we kind of learned there that you need those BCPs in place for whatever happened. We never imagined that we would be activating all of the BCPs simultaneously everywhere. And I don't think we also expected to stay at a work from home position for a longer time. And I think that everyone probably were concerned at the beginning, would productivity really stay high over a longer period of time? And I think that one of the things that actually surprised all of us is that when you deduct the amount of time that people commute and the effort and they put into it and the stress they put into it, you actually get even a higher productivity. And then we obviously came into a different place where staying home over a long period of time can actually kind of burn the employees to the place that you need to balance it. And I think this is where probably most of us are now in challenge. What we did see in a business, we saw a year of extremes. So people used to call each other a lot, take advice, and everyone who called me said, you know, what's going on? I said, everything is going on. Because you see online going up, you saw live kind of leaping forward, poker exploding, and on the other hand, retail completely closed, shut down to practically zero. Sports in the first lockdown went down because there were no sports event. We then saw esports, we saw virtual exploding, we saw people betting on third leagues in countries that I'm not even sure where they are on the globe, and I love my geography. And then in the second lockdown, it actually went the other way around because there were sports events. You really saw the resilience in online gaming because the shops got shut down again, but on the other hand, the online sports went up on the back of it. So I think it was a very, very interesting year in terms of how I implemented. And finally, I think that some of the trends that were there in the market before kind of mixed together with misconceptions. Say, I was a believer in actually working from the office, so I fully agree with Yaniv with the whole debate of what he was talking. Can you start working from home? The WFA worked, and it's a trend. It's a worldwide trend. And now, because of COVID, that trend kind of shot up, kind of leaped forward, and everybody, including myself, obviously, coming to the realization that the future will probably be a hybrid model. And then you saw also a lot of land-based operators that used to be very much, okay, online is a parallel business. I don't really need it. I'm doing fine with my retail business. They also came to realization that if they do not go online, they are missing on a big part of the business, and actually they can cease to exist without having their online opportunity. So what we see an influx, a huge amount of demand for land-based business to go online. So all in all, very interesting year. And if you ask about 21, so far I don't see a big change. I mean, I see the dial changing from 0 to 1, but the rest of it, it's kind of still the same. So still a lot for us to think of what the future will hold.
And Matt, you're showing us some of the challenges that we've all experienced over the course of this year for working from home, because sometimes your broadband lets you down. So over to you.
Yeah, nothing like waking up in the morning and your broadband goes out every 5 minutes. So apologies to all the attendees if I go out. Look, I think a lot of the themes are the same. I think I've been incredibly impressed at how creative the team has been, and frankly, how committed they've been to making the business continue to work. And so I agree with Shimon that, frankly, 21 is shaping up to be a lot like 2020. And really what we're focused on is trying to give our team clarity as much as we can about how we think the rest of this year plays out. Because I think people are getting to the point where they need to know that kind of change is coming, and that it will get better. And even though we don't have all the answers, I think they've appreciated the guidance that we've given them about how we're going to return to the office and things like that. But it's been an incredible year of firsts, but one that has not come without a cost in terms of just how burned out people are. So we're looking forward to 2021 being somewhat a return to normal.
Yeah, and you said, Matt, about the sort of special measures that you're starting to take to make people feel comfortable returning to the office. And I think we all recognize, as Shimon said, that, nothing much has changed yet. This is still a time in which a lot of people are understandably feeling very unsafe. So I'm just interested to know, Matt, Kalish, what special measures you've taken at DraftKings to protect your staff and partners, and any other lasting impacts on how you go about your business. Remote working, we've touched on quite a bit, but recruitment, travel, and so on.
Effectively, we put a pause on all work from office, all work-related travel that's non-essential. And we were fortunate, I guess, in a sense, relatively speaking at least, where we had very little retail going on. The company is 99% plus, digital. We were already up with, Zoom, Slack, and getting used to working in this international environment after acquiring SB Tech. So we were kind of biting that off anyway. I think that it was, maybe relative to some other organizations, a little bit less disruptive in our company. So as we look at going back to the office, there's really no rush, I guess. There's no pressure on any of our staff to return. We were in, I think, a very fortunate situation with a lot of tailwinds in the U.S. sports betting and iGaming markets as well, where we didn't have to furlough any staff. We didn't have to lay anybody off, do any pay cuts. We actually grew our team pretty substantially throughout the pandemic, and were able to onboard people remotely. So DraftKings, I think, relative to maybe some other organizations, we felt very fortunate about, how things kind of worked out.
Yeah, and I mean, John, having been to your office here in the Isle of Man, I know it's an office I'd be wanting to return to if I worked there. But what sort of special measures or lasting impact have you had?
Yeah, I think you're probably going to see a similar theme throughout. The approach we took right from the start is our position is we move first. So when it came to, for example, the Isle of Man, Malta, Gibraltar, we actually moved staff out of the office before it was even government mandated. So we've always tried to put staff health at the centre of this. When we've been fortunate here, very fortunate here in the Isle of Man, that in June last year we were allowed to come back to the office, no social distancing. But I think we are unique in the context of what our offices in Malta, Gibraltar, our development teams in South Africa, UK, etc. Broadly, most of those parts of the business are still working from home in some way, shape, or form. So the Isle of Man currently sits as unique. So special measures, it's the usual stuff. I don't know how many deep cleans all of your offices have gone through, but we are deep cleaning every single day. So this is the stuff we have to do. We've now tried to look at the staff welfare, vitality online sessions with the staff, regular check-ins that maybe you ignored in the past. I do a lot of broadcasting, team broadcasts now, and using the technology at our disposal. A lot of Q&A that helps staff stay connected to the business. And perhaps I find teams are more willing to ask questions when they don't have to stand up in front of their peers with a microphone and ask a question out loud. So I felt that level of engagement has actually increased during lockdown. So recruitment, I think we'll never go back to the way it was. That's a lot of the initial phases now, of course, can be done remotely. Technology is good enough. Obviously, a final interview you'd always want to do face-to-face, but as in most cases here, we've hired a lot of people, and to this day we haven't met them face-to-face. So that's certainly a challenge, but I don't think we'll go back to the way it was. Also, location of work. We've learned that you don't have to be in particular countries to do certain jobs, and now there is the ability that people can work remotely. You always want to hire the best people for the job, and sometimes when you're forced to bring them to the Isle of Man or Malta, Gibraltar, it can challenge that. So we won't go back. And then, of course, travel. Yeah, travel budgets have been cut dramatically. First half of 2021 looks like it's going to be very similar, but now it's trying to find that hybrid in terms of, unlike Matt, as a B2B business, we thrive on that engagement with our customers, and we certainly miss the ability to travel freely and just go out to dinner and do that type of normal engagement. So we're desperate to get back to a more normal way of working. So in 2021, we'll find that balance. It won't be as to the excess that it was in 2019, but it's going to be more than we did in 2020.
Yeah, certainly speaking as someone that previous to the pandemic spent an awful lot of time traveling, particularly to the US, I've certainly missed it. So perhaps we turn our attention to the US now. And that's a market which continues to take huge strides forward. So I'm interested to know how you see this continuing and what you think is required in order to see a step change in that market. And Jordan, perhaps I could come to you first on that.
Sure, I'd be honored. It's a topic du jour, I'm sure, for this panel. The two big things that have happened, I think, during the lockdown. Obviously, there was already momentum, but step change happened during the lockdown. More states, passing laws, regulating, both just based on inertia, but then also, of course, as there's gaps in budgets that need to be filled as a result of the economic fallout. And the second one is just the pickup in e-commerce trends from a consumer perspective. I've seen some articles that have talked about, a 5-year or more acceleration in just more use of e-commerce, everything from just payments to interactivity, et cetera. So those are the two sort of secular trends that collide and accelerate things. Of course, on the sports side, more and more it's become just a normally expected and accepted thing across America to have sports betting. Wasn't that, I've been in the industry for about 15 years. It wasn't that long ago, I remember, where it was just completely off base, and now it's just completely accepted. You can't watch any kind of a sporting event. Even though I live in Europe, I still love my American sports. So you can't watch a sporting event without seeing a DraftKings, FanDuel, PointsBet, whatever logo on the basketball court or on the football field. And I think the thing that really will help pick up momentum is iGaming as well. The Michigan launch just 10, 14 days ago. The numbers are just massive coming out of the gates there in sports and especially in iGaming. And I think now that you have 3 large states in the U.S. plus a couple of smaller states that have legalized it, I think people will start to take note, and the same thing will happen. It will become more and more accepted. And then, with some action happening around the Wire Act and how that's possibly being, reinterpreted, that might provide an either further accelerants to push it across the U.S. So that's, in a summary, that's the way that I sort of see things, and Scientific Games sees things. Yeah.
And Matt King, are you much on the same page?
Yeah, I think we're very much on the same page. I mean, Jordan said it, but I mean, the step change is already happening, right? If you look at where the business was a year ago, the industry was a year ago versus where it is today, both the size of it is a step change larger. I think the level of engagement is a step change larger, and also the pace is growing, right? We rolled out 2 new states in Virginia and Michigan over the span of 18 hours. And I think when we started this journey in sports betting, it took us 6 months to do the first 2 states. And so I think the pace of change is increasing. And then I think there's also step changes going on, to Jordan's point, in terms of the acceptance, right? If you look at the first game back of the NBA after the pandemic shut down in August, you had Charles Barkley talking about the FanDuel odds on the Turner pregame show. That would have never happened a year before. And so I think you are starting to see the gradual introduction of sports betting into not just the local sports conversations, but also the national sports conversation, which creates some really exciting opportunities.
Yeah, and Shimon, what are your thoughts?
2020 was a really fantastic year for us in terms of the US, because obviously we launched in New Jersey for the first time. With some of our good partners. We then continue to launch onwards with some more, and we have a really healthy pipeline in the sense of the content and what we want to do. We see the US as the biggest opportunity standing for online everywhere in the world. It's the biggest and best in the sense, and I'm curious to hear some of the numbers that maybe some of my colleagues here are thinking, but the numbers we're seeing and believing are in the tens of billions already in the next 5 years or so. We see that the customers, our understanding of the players, the end customers in the US are much more adaptive and will go online much faster than other jurisdictions and regulations that is being regulated throughout, let's say, Europe, just by the mere fact that the players in the US are much more accustomed, say, to e-commerce in that sense. So we see that things will really explode there really fast. I'm happy to say that we have a big, hefty budget allocated to the US. We will be coming with all of our products, all of our portfolio to the US. We will be installing the IMS in the platform in each of the states, and hopefully we will be working with Continent 8 on doing that. We will come and we will make sure that we install our live facility in each and every one with the states. We think live is a material part as a product in the US, in online, not all going forward. And we will obviously look at it as the land of opportunity. And I'm looking very much forward to 21 to really being a very successful, hopefully with a lot of good PRs to us and a lot of good work and launches in the US. And I'm also looking forward to working with each and every one of you in the US. I think working together is something that can work for all of us in that sense.
Yes, and you're right, Shimon. Like you, Continent 8 have had a particularly active year in terms of expanding and rolling out in the US. So I think that's a real indication of the things to come. Yaniv, of course, your role focuses specifically on the US. So this will be a topic close to your heart.
Yeah, it's been close to my heart since we launched in the US. We have the benefit of some perspective. We launched back in 2013, the first 3 states. And I've seen the market sort of tread along, people talking about how accepted sports betting is. I keep telling that back in the days when we were negotiating contracts, lawyers were specifically very aggressive about removing any mention of sports betting to any contract whatsoever. Up until 2018, it was actually, those contracts would not get approved by regulators when you sign them and try to pass them through. So we've come a long way. I think what we're now seeing is just a super accelerated trend. Generally speaking, we typically talk from our neck of the woods, but it's very seldom that you see a market just being manifested or born this way. And there's sort of a cyclic ritual every month, about the 14th or 15th of the month, when results coming in from New Jersey, from Pennsylvania, now from Illinois. There's a host of states that are now publishing their results, and right after that, most of the investment bankers sort of upgrade there. Right now, it looks like a bidding process on who gets the biggest TAM in 2025. So, but it doesn't really matter whether the numbers right now are 10, 12, 20, or $30 billion. Everybody now understands this is the single biggest opportunity over the next few years. It's moving, as Matt can allude to, very fast. And we've just put a very strong emphasis throughout our tenure here about multi-product and technology. I'm happy to see that the companies are now going public in the U.S. have put that special emphasis on it, and I think it's good for us as an industry. But technology in general and owning your tech stack is, I can't overemphasize how important that is, at least from your self-sufficiency and your charting your own course. We're just about 2 years in, having looked at the market since 2013, and, being part of a company that is 23 years old, which in online years, it's like dog years. It's about 140, 150 years old. So you understand the importance of treading this very consistently and on the same tech stack from an operational perspective. And the last point is, again, having the benefit of a global perspective, I also think we need to put our eyes firmly on everything that has to do with safe gaming and responsible gaming. The market is moving very fast. This is happening when we see what's going on in Europe. So alongside the market development, I think as an industry that has a history of, slight fragmentation and a very consistent, coherent voice, we have to tend to that proactively rather than this being thrusted upon the industry. And if we do that and develop that into the technology going forward, I think that that would only reinforce the market and as a recreational and entertainment destination. Right now, betting is considered an entertainment destination, which is good. Broadens the base, broadens TAM, the total addressable market in that, and we're very excited to see more than one product being introduced in that regards, having developed and deployed both casino and poker, which I think is making a sort of it had a big renaissance in 2020, and I think this is very much an American game that we'll see grow in the next couple of years.
So moving on from the US, I think we've reflected a little on the pandemic and its impact upon us, but I think for all of us, it will have sharpened the importance to us of the purpose and impact that our organizations have. And so I just wondered, Matt King, what your thoughts were, or how your approach to CSR has evolved over the past year.
CSR has always been something that's been very important to us. I think if you look at the profile of the people and the passion of the people that we've always brought onto the organization, they've cared about more than just work. And that's something that we've had to harness and embrace as we've kind of grown the workforce. So we've always been doing a lot. I think what really changed for us in 2020 was the need to talk more publicly about it. We had always kind of gone about it from the perspective of let's just do good work and, not really worry about kind of the PR aspect of it. But I think as the national conversation and really the global conversation around, racial justice or social justice issues kind of emerged, we were in a place where I think we had to start to talk more publicly and engage more publicly than we have in the past. And so really the journey for us has been, how do we codify and talk about, what we stand for, but also do it very consciously in a tone of voice that recognizes, we want to still be a brand and a product that brings people together, as opposed to one that kind of sharpens the divisions that exist particularly here in the U.S. And that kind of narrative has been really the focus as opposed to the content of the work, because the content of the work has always been there.
And I think John, you would certainly have some advice on that, because the importance of your people being aware of and being able to be proud of the things that you're doing is something I think you've really managed to achieve with the Play It Forward initiative and your other approaches to CSR.
Yeah, thanks, Micky. It's probably our first, we set up our formal CSR program in 2004, believe it. It seems like a long time ago. That's over the years, that's manifested itself into Play It Forward. So it's something we've always been very active on. Probably interesting, a bit like Matt, initially we started off and we were a little bit quieter and we didn't really talk about it. If you remember back to the industry in 2004 to 2008, it wasn't as public as it is now. People didn't talk as openly. There still hadn't been that general acceptance, but at our core we wanted to do good. And our stance in CSR is still the same. We want to do good. We focus now around people, place and planet, predominantly in and around the areas where we have people on the ground, so Isle of Man, Malta, Gibraltar. But the change this year has obviously been, with the need to move towards the people aspect. So we changed a lot of our spend into COVID-related charities. All of them are related to, for example, the Isle of Man, Manx Solidarity Fund that was set up in the wake or in the midst of the pandemic, looking at Gibraltar Health Authority to help them with some health needs there, looking at Inspire Malta as well. So we've tried to do all of that, but actually the one change that we found, and this is still shocking, in all of those jurisdictions, they are wealthy jurisdictions, the need for food banks. And that was a significant shift. We generally never had to support food banks in those areas previously. We did in 2020 and we did in 2021. So what we've always tried to do, what we did as well, is when we closed the offices, for example, here in the Isle of Man, we still had, and in the island, it's a small island. These are suppliers become dependent on working for us and working for our colleagues in PokerStars. But what we did, instead of leaving them alone and actually just for months, they didn't know what would happen, we kept them working. But what we did is we got them to produce food and actually donate that food. So we just felt it was a win-win. We got to keep the small business working, keeping those jobs employed without the need to be furloughed, and at the same time we managed to get food to the needy in the Isle of Man and Malta and Gibraltar, where we could do the same. So that's our approach to CSR has never changed. However, this year it's been, in 2020 and this year, specific focus actually around food and making sure people are looked after.
So we thought a little bit about heard a little bit about how people have been innovative when it comes to CSR. Thinking about our wider approach to the market, to what extent is innovation a priority as we go into 2021? And how are you incubating that innovation? And what are your plans and predictions for the technology roadmap? Yaniv, you touched on this a little when we were talking about the US, so perhaps I could come to you first.
Well, innovation is always a cornerstone, but I think the U.S., and I think that some of my colleagues touched on this, the U.S. is a special market in the sense that while it's one of the youngest regulated sports market and regulated market, online market regulation is very different than their previous reincarnation. It is also the most highly developed e-commerce market in the world. So consumers here are very used to seamless, frictionless customer or product experiences, but regulated or online sports betting is generally new. I think it sort of puts an emphasis on the necessity of innovation, but also is a tremendous opportunity to introduce something new. Most of the products today in the marketplace, at least from my opinion, are results of sort of a rush to market, which are sort of adaptations to a more European classic sports books trying to be adapted to the U.S. I think the Daily Fantasy is much closer to what an American product looks like in that regards, and I think this creates an enormous opportunity to innovate in that field. We were talking briefly before we got started about the finance applications like Robinhood, and the rest of them are now, it looks like there's an overall convergence between betting and trading. I think if you want to look at how custom-built or products that are tailor-made to mostly the U.S. consumer, we should take a page off of that and have a look and adopt the good things about them, about the customer experience and the language they speak, although there are also some challenges around that. But regulation on one hand, we're a highly regulated space, so we come from a sort of regulated pedigree. But the customer experience, on the other hand, today, opening an account and playing on some of our products is rather cumbersome because of some of these constraints, and I think we need to develop a more frictionless experience in today's world.
Matt Kalish, your view?
In the U.S., at least, I mean, there's an advantage in a sense that the product we're launching is so far superior to what a lot of Americans have ever experienced. You know, they're used to going to maybe Las Vegas and seeing a very limited option in terms of what you can even bet on, or they're calling a local bookie. So then DraftKings or whoever launch in the state, and they see this endless menu of countless betting options, live betting, cash out, all of this stuff that, I think the first year or two is just, the consumer is just, enamored by all of the variety. And pretty soon, though, I think that there'll be a lot of sort of growth tied to the advancement of in-play betting in the U.S., probably a lot to what the broadcasters and media networks do as far as integrating the sports betting experience into the broadcast. We've started seeing more of that going on with partners like Turner, ESPN, et cetera. And I think there'll be more and more of that, which will just help expose the product and give people that kind of experience that they're looking for when watching live sports. And that in conjunction with advances in in-play experiences in the sportsbook itself, I think will drive that next wave of growth.
Shimon, what's your view on innovation in 2021?
So I'd like to maybe last time we talked about it from the product perspective. Maybe this time we'll talk about it a little bit more from the technology perspective, and Playtech being first and foremost a technology company within the gaming industry, and probably we can talk about live as a product being super innovative maybe a little bit later on. I think the first thing you need to understand is that to be a technology leader, you need to embrace innovation within your organization. And when you talk about innovation, it's not necessarily this disruptive technology that comes in, say, such as mobile did 10 years ago. It's those gradual improvements that everybody can do gradually over time. And what you need to do probably is within your organization, allow the tech teams and allow the product teams to have some 10%, 15%, each organization can decide their own, that space, that of resources where they can experiment and do things that will lead you to the next level. And the things they will come up with will just, sometimes it will fail because innovation by essence, by definition, it has, inherent risk, but a lot of the times they will come up with just amazing things. It will not only improve materially their motivation to work and how they do things, but it will actually come with some amazing things. And this is how we come about it in Playtech. In addition, what we do have in Playtech is also we have an innovation lab with its sole purpose, not a huge one, but really one that's really effective with its sole purpose of coming with new innovation. Some of the products that we are more proud that came from the innovation lab is what we call the marketplace, which is actually the Playtech open platform. It's the Playtech opening it up and being able to cater some of the IMS and the platform feature to third-party slots to external studios, not only to the Playtech content, which I think was a giant leap forward for us that came from that innovation lab. So all in all, I think that if you look at it, what you need to do, you need to make sure, and all of us are in one way, shape, or form a technology organization, you need to make sure that your managers have the time and the resources to kind of experiment by themselves. It will give them the additional motivation, and they will come with fantastic ideas going forward.
Jordan, do you agree?
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot else to add. I mean, like I said, sort of in the opening comment, 2020 was, it was innovative ways to innovate, I guess would be the tagline there. And it's not just, of course, it's on the product side, but it's also on, processes, even just like basics of the business. Like we saw, like regulators, for instance, who, were used to doing things with like hard copies only, like, hey, how do you actually deal with having a hearing virtually and getting something done, say signed virtually. Wow, how innovative is that? not terribly, but those are little things like that add up and make the business more efficient as well. So for me, innovation, yes, everyone thinks about it as product and technology, but it goes beyond that. And we talk about it all the time across my team. It's every function, whether you're a lawyer, whether you're a finance person, technologist, product person, et cetera.
And continuing, I guess, on innovation, 2020 was a difficult year for live sports fans, and that's going to continue for a while yet. So given most sports fans are largely unable to attend their team's matches, are there opportunity for sports betting providers to bring them closer, virtually of course, to the game? And I think who better to come to on that than first Matt King and then Matt Kalish. So Matt King.
Absolutely. And I think it goes beyond just people that can't go to games anymore, because if you think about any given game that is broadcast, vast majority of people are watching the game at home, even in normal times, and not at the game. And so we take very seriously our role at helping sports fans engage more with the games that they love. And that's both pre-game in the sense of they are voracious consumers of content, and we see that there's a dearth of high-quality content that kind of integrates sports betting into the narrative, and so we produce a lot of that ourselves. We've done some interesting stuff kind of during the game. So one of the things that we've done with our TVG product, which is our horse racing product, is launched jockey cams in some of the races that we have that's only available in the TVG OTT product. And so there's a really cool way to have a totally different view of the experience that you couldn't get even if you were there. And we'll look to continue to explore those things, because the nice thing about the world that we live in today is I think both the broadcasters and the teams and the leagues recognize that sports fans want to consume content differently than they have in the past. And that's going to unlock, I think, interesting opportunities that, to the earlier comment, you just need to give people 10 or 15% of their time to think up new stuff to do and how to use those opportunities. So we try to do that kind of across the board as an organization.
And the other, Matt?
Yeah, I'm sure that very rapidly people will be returning to live sports. But in the meantime, I think digital gives you great data back in terms of what consumers are engaging with. So we've seen just tremendous adoption of maybe things that wouldn't have traditionally been very popular, forms of sports content during the pandemic. And because it's all tracked digitally, we're able to really understand, like, for example, we knew that esports grew 50x in entries and 20x audience during the pandemic from last year. And so just being able to detect, hey, these audiences, they're very malleable. Anything live going on, they just love playing. They love predicting things. They love the game. And whatever live is going on worldwide, if we can expose it to the right audiences, they'll jump in. So I think there's been tremendous advances in sort of the ability to think about, cross-sell or affinity for different forms of sports and bring the right sort of content to the right consumers throughout, the last year or so.
And you mentioned data, Matt. How do you see the use of data changing in the industry, Shimon?
Data is a very powerful thing, and once you can implement it within the organization. So obviously there was a huge material leap forward in the way we handle data in the previous decade. And some of our software back then was already probably 10 to 15 years old, and there was a lot of investment needed to upgrade the way you handle data. And there was a lot of buzzwords, a lot of talking obviously about big data and going into the cloud, which I'm sure most of us have done. But once you get it right, once you put the investment in data, there is so much you can do, which is unbelievable. But obviously, before that, though, you need to turn it into kind of information. And to do that, you need some really smart algorithms running on your data. And even when you get all of that, you need to take effect in real time. So there is a lot of technological work, a lot of effort, a lot of investment that you need to put into data to make it actually workable. But then once you do it, it's just absolutely amazing. There's a leap forward in what you can do, in what your products can do. I actually had Simo, our head of Playtech Protect, in a meeting last week, and he was coming to show us some of the things that they've done in real time, and maybe it can connect us to some of our discussions on responsible gaming. And what he said is that when you look at the data in real time of players, you can actually predict that potentially some of the players, a very small number of them, are maybe in a risk. And then what you can do is just push them simple, gentle, safe messages in real time, such as, how about if you go and just set your betting limits? So instead of giving that, message to everyone and kind of attacking people that maybe, players that maybe are unnecessarily, you can maybe in a very much more efficient and pinpointed manner do responsible gaming, but do it in a way that actually protects the business, protects the players, and not beyond it. And obviously that's just one example of many, many examples that you can do with data once you get it right inside your technology stack and inside your organization.
Yaniv, is your experience similar?
Well, very much so. I think that the past year has only demonstrated, I think previously we said if you give us data and, everything will be fine. But I think it's also around the pandemic. I think there's so much data out there right now in the world, and we sort of moved on from data to insights and from insights to actions. And I think it's extremely important to build that capability over your data. Our ability to generate data, especially digital organizations, is almost endless. But we've moved on and we've invested in, over the past 2 years, 888 has always been a very analytics-driven organization. But over the past 2 years, we've progressed well and developed and deployed a lot of the artificial intelligence technology that is now sort of the bedrock of the business, taking that data, collecting it, but then processing it and automating it in a way that creates actionable items, especially across territories and across our products. And that doesn't always, or that doesn't only apply to the product. So having be able to serve customers with poker, casino, sport, bingo, other products, it is also tied into the safe gaming areas of the business now. And we've created that infrastructure that allows us to plug in both proprietary algorithms and third-party algorithms, and that's an engine below everything that we do today. So to Shimon's point, is bringing the player a customized experience. Could be the right product at the right time, but it can also be the right action at the right time, whether setting betting limits, cool-off periods, just customizing that message to him. That creates a lot of trust between you and the player. He knows that you're here to entertain him, but also take care of him in those circumstances, that he can reach out. And that's been a powerful, we've seen that trend and that effect across the business, not just from we were trending very well in 2020, but the idea into 21 and looking 3-4 years down the line, I think if there's a single sort of growth opportunity for us as an organization, it's around that technology that is sort of embedded into everything we do today.
And we focused quite a bit on the US today, but whilst you all might be stuck at home right now, you are all global leaders working in a global industry and operating across a huge range of markets, particularly in terms of their maturity and their approach to taxation, regulation, and so on. So I was interested, Jordan, to know what your views of emerging markets were and which current regulating jurisdiction you feel best balances market potential with protection, tax, innovation.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a lot of in the mass press, the U.S. dominates in terms of new markets, but we see a ton of activity, really in every region. Canada, there's some things changing. Europe. There's changes in regs. There's also opening of new market opportunities, APAC, and especially LATAM. So we see a lot of movement really everywhere across the globe. And and for us at iGaming, obviously we're focused on the U.S. market, but we are a global supplier in nature. And a lot of what we do is work with our land-based gaming arms and our lottery arms, who are present in all markets around the globe. So we often are on sort of the leading edge of some of the new emerging market opportunities that might be coming by virtue of those relationships as well. I think one of the most important things when new markets are opening up from a regulatory and taxation perspective, it's first off to find that sweet spot on tax, high enough to generate meaningful income for the host jurisdiction, but low enough to make it economically viable for operators and suppliers. And then from a regulatory perspective, you want to have the right balance in place from the get-go. Otherwise, it might be a short-term opportunity to have no protections, But then when you get into the medium term, and we've seen this in several markets, especially in Europe right now, where there's a significant amount of blowback. So, being proactive, working with, whether it's legislators, lobbyists, politicians, regulators in new countries that might not be experienced in, digital and sports betting and iGaming, to ensure that it's being set up in a responsible way, not just for the short term, but for the long term.
And Shimon, your view, and you can't say Gibraltar's the best just because you're sitting there today.
I don't take sides in that sense, don't worry. Firstly, I think that regulated as a trend is obviously a challenging one to the industry and to everyone in that sense, because obviously there is a lot of work that you need to do. But all in all, regulated as a trend is a blessed one, in the sense that once you put yourself the strategy and the policy to go to regulated markets, every time a market regulates, it's a reset button for you to go and work there. And what we see is actually that once a market is regulated, we actually see there more work and more business for Playtech as a whole. And we think that therefore the direction is obviously a one that is a very positive one going forward. If you ask about marketing or markets that are regulated going forward, then we continue to see Europe and Eastern Europe as a good potential in that sense. Obviously, LATAM is something that is opening up big time. I think in parallel to the US, the LATAM world is also progressing. So all in all, I would say that the next 5 years will be definitely dominated by the Americas and regulating, which is a huge opportunity for all of us. The regulator, when it comes to regulate, has a very difficult task, and I wholly agree with Jordan here, because they need to find the right balance between responsible gaming, taxation, and letting the business thrive. And that balance is a spot that is not really always easy to find, and that takes a lot of thinking and a lot of experience, which sometimes obviously they don't, especially when they are newly regulated. And I wouldn't choose, with your permission, any regulator that maybe does a better job, but I would call from here to the regulators, course-wide, if they could work closer together, if they could work maybe on kind of synchronizing the regulation, and that the different rules, in Europe, US, or in the Latin world, if they can work closer together, it will be much more efficient, and it will probably be much more successful in the way it's implemented. So if there's one thing I would hope to see going forward, is regulators kind of getting together and implementing that regulation that can maybe fall under more than just one jurisdiction, but actually cover a few jurisdictions. That would be much more powerful in the sense of how it works, and it would be much more efficient in the sense that the market can attend to it.
I think that's a really important point, Shimon, in terms of getting the best outcomes for the players. That's exactly right. Moving on from that, or following on from that, what do you consider, John, to be the biggest security and compliance risks for the industry?
Well, just quickly, if we could talk compliance first, I think Shimon makes an excellent point. I actually, just what Shimon said there, I think highlights what I think is the biggest compliance risk. I think as we look at new and emerging regulated markets, even changes within existing regulated markets, the more changes there are diversification amongst these regulating markets and regulated markets. It's actually a real technological challenge. And I think for my organization, I feel that's our single biggest compliance risk right now, just how to stay compliant across multiple regulated markets. And all of these regulated markets have the same reason for being, which is to protect their players, which all of us on this call are supportive of, hugely supportive of. But it would be nice if there was more coordination amongst these jurisdictions. It certainly would make our lives easier, and I think it would protect the players even more so than they are now. From a security perspective, it's sort of never ending. I think I find our challenge, we have development teams across 6 continents, multiple companies. We have hosting sites in multiple jurisdictions, multiple countries, and the security landscape and the risks grow even greater every day. So usual stuff, traditionally DDoS attacks, we've all faced those. Thankfully, we have a great partner with Consonant 8 who help us mitigate those every single day. But now we have to be aware of ransomware attacks, and I think exacerbated in 2020 with remote working. Obviously, a lot of organizations have rapid adoption of cloud technology, and I suspect that adoption of cloud technology has come before the security teams have caught up. So there's risk certainly there, and even things like layer 7 bot attacks, amongst others. So the best way to describe it, both to your security team. So I sit down with them a lot, and the way they explain it, I'm a simple accountant. They say we can no longer rely on just high walls to protect your house. Now we need to implement bright light security guards, bars on the window, motion sensors, security patrols, alarms, and the Doberman pinchers, or that's pretty much what I like to call our security team. They are the Doberman pinchers. And also what one of the things that we are doing, adopt best practice for your security risks. One of the certifications we achieved during lockdown was 27001. So we had to do that certification remotely, and we were successful. So just applying people the right technologies and work to best standards and best practice. That's what we're doing at security.
And you mentioned Continent 8 there, John, and I'm very much aware that we are up against the hour. So whilst we haven't quite got through everything that we wanted to discuss today, we've got very close. And as I said at the outset, today is all thanks to Continent 8. And I take it that your presence from all of you is an indication that you hold them in the same high regard that I do.
Yeah, I think it's, if I could, I think our first relationship with Continent 8, and Mike and Jay, they may be watching, I think it's 1998. So we have been working with Continent 8 since then, and it's a familial relationship. You know, we see them as family. There isn't a market that we've entered without Continent 8. There isn't a market that we would enter without Continent 8. It's as simple as that. So they're an incredibly integral, they are a core partner for our business, and I'm looking forward to entering many, many more regulated markets side by side with Continent 8.
So our hour together has flown by, chaps. So I think all I really have time to do now is thank you all for your contribution today and for making my job so easy. Huge relief. But also to thank the person who always makes it easy, certainly for me, to work with Continent 8, Roberta Castle. Roberta.
Hi guys. Hi everyone. Good afternoon. Roberta Castle, Chief Revenue Officer for Continent 8. Firstly, a special thanks to Micky, whose reputation in the industry is unparalleled, and I'm sure you'll all agree, a legendary host for this legendary panel. Thank you so much, Micky. Appreciate it. And many thanks to the panel for the lively and fascinating discussion. You guys are truly revolutionising and helping us evolve this industry so much. Thank you. We hope today's emphasised that Continent 8 is all about collaboration. And again, I'd like to thank the panel for some of their generous comments about us there as well. We appreciate it. For your investment in our partnerships, and for all of our valued customers, we appreciate you. Thank you. Despite the global challenges and uncertainty, all at Continent 8 are extremely positive about what we know will be a transformational year for us all. We intend to carry on listening and developing based on the sector's requirements and continue to invest and deliver new innovative solutions. We are well advanced in our plans for expansion of our 60 global sites, as well as further enhancements to our security and cloud products as well. We're really proud and grateful to our own team who are committed to driving the best possible customer service experience. We thank them all. As always, we'll continue to work with the industry as technology partner of choice. And again, my sincere thanks to everyone involved today. So to Micky, Matt, Shimon, John, Yaniv, Matt, Jordan, and especially the team at EGR for making all this possible for us as well today. Copies of today's webinar are going to be available on our website later this week. There'll also be Spanish and Portuguese language versions available as well. Thank you all for joining us today. Have a great afternoon and stay safe.